Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. So lovely to meet you both virtually, of course. How are you both doing?
Good, good. It's lovely to meet you.
Not the
Good. Yeah,
not the
thanks
same as
for
being able
having
to do
us.
these things in person, but it's the next best option. So,
Mhm.
so maybe you could just kick off with a brief introduction to the surrogate. Obviously, there's a clue there in the title of some of the subject matter, but it's a very specific, nuanced story. So maybe in your own words, you can just introduce a bit. What can people expect if they're going to see this film?
Jasmine?
Oh, okay. So, what can people expect besides seeing my face for a good 90 something minutes? But no kidding. They can expect a very complicated tale, a human tale, um, a lesson in empathy, and a story of friendship. Do you know, a story of a very complicated and beautiful and sometimes um, painful friendship. And also good laughs. There are a few laughs in there, and also some of the most adorable shots of Leon that you've ever seen.
And
That's
sorry, go
I
on.
I I do feel like British people, not to generalize, but you tend to understand my sense of humor. So I'm really thrilled about I'm excited to see. I hope that to hear a little bits of laughter here and there. But
Yeah, maybe it's the New York vibe as well. We've got, there's that kind of like edgy wit that you get I think in a lot of films based there. So maybe it's to do with that. Um,
yeah.
so, thinking about how it is a very specific scenario that's set out in the film, what was it for you, Jeremy, that sparked the idea? Was it something from your personal life or something that you'd seen? Like, what was that attracted you to tell this story, put it on screen? And for you, Jasmine, what was it about the script that pulled you in and made you want to be a part of the project?
Well, um I was thinking a lot. I've been thinking about how when I first moved to New York when I was 18, I was expecting kind of this like progressive paradise and found that to not be the case. But there certainly are people who like to pat themselves on the back as if it is or as if they are. So
Mm.
I just became really fascinated with kind of fractures within progressive communities and um hypocrisy and I've always been really I've for a long time I've wanted to make something about a friendship between or just any kind of relationship between and just the dynamic between gay men and straight women. And I mean those friendships have been some of the most continue to be some of the sort of most important relationships in my life. And we certainly have seen very like slightly one-dimensional or just overly idealized, overly saccharine, maybe representations of that in pop
Mm.
culture. I grew up with seeing that, and I wanted to make a film about that kind of relationship that was a bit more realistic and just showed more of um, the less pleasant sides of it, and because that's part of making it realistic. And yeah, and just I definitely um I'm curious about, or something I was wanting to write about was the ways in which gay men can sometimes, or and I've been this person, um uh sort of think of ourselves as feminists in a way where once you're telling yourself like, oh, I'm a like as if that's like a foregone conclusion. So and then that thought prevents you from actually listening and actually being deferential, and actually sort of prevents you from being a feminist. And yeah, so these are all things that I that were kind of bouncing around my head when I and I was in I surrogacy is when I was younger, it definitely was how I pictured having a family in the future. And I again had this idealized idea of it, so I wanted to um sort of teach myself about the ways in which it could be complicated, and And yeah, so that was sort of how I started the research process that led to the writing process.
Mm. Yeah, and for me, when I got this script from Erica Hart, I was just excited that I was getting to see a fully fledged Black woman, like a human being, and not someone who was a sidekick or a funny friend or a wife or a girlfriend or the help or something on the side of the periphery. Of seeing a full human, and someone that I could identify with, and someone who had flaws and annoyed me a little bit, and reminded me of versions of myself, and had coping mechanisms that I could recognize and understand. That's something, specifically, I'll speak for like Black actresses, that's something that's pretty rare. And it's becoming less rare, which is so wonderful. But I mean, the ability to play a human being is something that we all have, but the actual material sometimes can be rare. So to see that, come in my inbox was like, oh, wow, like I have to be a part of this. This is incredible. And then the sheer blessing, this is the only word that comes to mind, of being able to participate in a story that has this complex of argument, that represents so many different sides of like intersection, is something that is beyond the scope of what I thought I would be in, of a film that I would be in this early in my career. So that was a huge, like, yes, let's do this. It was a huge plus for me. And it's something I'm still reaping the benefits of, like today, like having these conversations with you and everyone we're having conversations with today and throughout the week. I mean, I have this movie to thank for having these kinds of incredible and beautiful conversations.
And there's so many layers, I think, in the film. You've got gay couple wanting to have a kid, they're mixed race couple, it's in New York, you've got different family dynamics for each character coming from different sides. Then of course, the idea of raising a child with special needs, and all these kind of like moral quandaries. So did you feel any pressure to, in terms of representation, there can sometimes be a spotlight thrown on, when you make a film like this, in terms of doing your background research and what the process is like, and the reality of families who do have a child with Down syndrome. What was that preparation like, and did you feel any pressure in how you represented things in the film?
I felt enormous pressure that I was putting on myself, I think, just in writing a Black woman character to begin with. It just it was like, and wanting just to because it's like, either if it's not, if it doesn't feel authentic on screen, it's like it's this risky thing, because not only then would it be a bad movie, but then it could be this harmful thing. And I would ask myself, like, well, what is the worst that could happen? Because if it is really bad, then just no one will see it, all of that. But I definitely, we've talked about this, how people, producers and just various people would ask me, like, well, like, does she have to be Black? Could it be a white actress or whatever? Because then you would be maybe staying in your lane a little bit more. And I definitely never wanted to, say that I understand, like, that I know what it's like to be a Black woman or anything like, and I never fully will. But my answer to those people was, or maybe I wouldn't necessarily say it this way, but in some instances I did, is that I just would rather try to understand, spend these years sort of trying, and knowing that I'll never fully get there, but getting to work with Jasmine, getting to, and just trying as much as possible to get as many Black women involved, and whoever wasn't, as many women of color involved, and just try to defer, not just to learn from them, but to actually give hand reins away, and that, yeah, I knew I would rather, you know, try that and be faced with whatever I was faced with than just kind of always staying in um my own lane. And then in terms of, yeah, this same goes for in terms of I still feel, you know, this the yeah, like a similar thing about the Down syndrome community, and specifically the Down syndrome community in New York. And so I was fairly ignorant going into the process. So in about, I'm trying to think of what year it was that I started. I think it was maybe 2014, 15, that I started volunteering at this nonprofit that it has it's sort of across North America, but there's a Harlem location called Gigi's Playhouse. So I started going there and just meeting people, and that, you know, was such a blessing, just to become friends with all these people who are in that community. And and again, yeah, trying to you know, get as much feedback on the script as possible, and try to you know, to like you know, when I was working with those the actors, many of whom are child actors, you know, trying to really let them lead in the moment, and not be like forcing them
Mhm.
into, you know, my idea of something. Does
Mm.
that
Mhm.
answer any of that? Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, can you ask the question one more time? Because now I was listening to Jeremy and I was like,
Sorry, I'm like,
and then completely forgot.
Like it just in a nutshell, kind of, you know, did you feel pressure in terms of, you know, representing all these different very nuanced characters and subjects? You know, did you have to do research about what it was like to, you know, be a surrogate mother, what it's like to raise a
Yeah.
kid with Down syndrome,
that's
you know?
another community. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. You know what I will say though? I will say absolutely so much responsibility, but I would rather work on something where I feel responsible to other human beings and to another community and to my own, than something that I can like walk away and throw away at the end of the day. That's why we're here as human beings. We're here to have conversations with each other. We're here to support each other. We're here to learn about each other. And this process really gave me the opportunity to do all three of those things. And I now, you know more than I did walking into it, but also I have greater empathy now. That's always something that I'm working on. It's like working on the empathy for others and empathy specifically for myself. Because if you don't have empathy for yourself, if you don't care about yourself, your care for other people kind of reflects that.
Yeah.
So this really taught me a lot about, the communities that are involved in the film. It also taught me about how to greater care for my own community.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'd much rather do that than be like, oh, I did this thing where you know, I was an alien for a day and I walked away, So I'm really, really grateful for that opportunity and that responsibility.
And then I wanted to ask a little bit about the way it's actually filmed, because we're talking about authenticity. Like some of it almost feels like, you know, we're a fly on the wall, it's a documentary. You know, it's so realistic and it's so rooted, I think, in this very, you know, specific location of New York, even the, you know, sort of the hipster cafes and bars. But then, you know, you're also going into the community centers. And even the way I think the characters speak to each other almost sounds slightly unscripted. So, you know, what was that, you know, in terms of using like handheld cameras and things like that? And then also from like your point of view as an actress, you know, what was that like to try and make everything feel quite real and natural?
Yeah. I'll answer this first if that's okay, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Shout out
please.
to Mia Coffee Henry. Mia Coffee Henry, who is an incredible filmmaker. I believe she has a bunch of other projects out right now, so she's incredible. Also a Black woman. She really did beautiful work, especially in the scene, the daycare scene, of just like sitting back and filming and observing the kids just having what would be like a normal playtime. And not being intrusive, but also being a part of it. She does a really beautiful job of making sure that she catches the moment and is also with you. And it feels like you're with she's another actor in that. in that sense. She is another acting scene partner. So it makes my job so easy. Like really, really grateful for her and for her work. And also just like, Jeremy did a beautiful job of writing this. So sometimes you think that things are improvised, and really we're just saying what's on the page, because he did a really beautiful job of putting the ums and the overlaps and whatnot in there. But also like Chris and Sullivan and Brandon and Ebony and everyone on this film is an incredible actor and has great theatrical roots in their acting. So they know how to play. They know how to have those kind of conversations where it feels alive, because we are having those conversations. We are those people. And Jeremy also gave us the really great gift of being like, yeah, you can improvise if you want to. Like nothing is precious. I know I want these points said because of, the trajectory of the film. But if there's a better way to say this, like you have the free reign to do it. And we may use that take, we may not, but you have the ability and the power to do so. So a lot of these scenes felt like, like a fun rehearsal, even though they were taping it, it felt like play,
Well, and a lot of that there's countless examples in the film where where a character says something in a more direct way than I had originally written. So that's the funny thing about the improv, is that sometimes people will think they have an idea of like, oh, improv is like adding something, but I found it in this case especially that smart actors, which I had in this case, will the improv will actually be streamlining, taking something away to make it more concise. Yeah, and what's funny about our cinematographer Mia is that a lot of the work I'd seen of hers before was very locked off. You know, I'm like, what do you call those things? Tripods, and often surreal. And so for this, it really was, the choice to do the handheld, what really was so that we could follow that the improv wasn't just in the sense of the dialogue, but that, if an actor had an impulse, a physical impulse, that, the camera could follow it. Yeah, that was, kind of the guiding principle throughout, which was like that the actor is like the person in charge on the set. So that extended to the production design, where I was like, I want every location to be 360, which also then, proposes a challenge for the lights, so that that the actor was not limited in any, the cast was not limited in terms of, where the scene could go. And yeah, that, I mean, that puts a lot of pressure on the actors, and certainly like a lot of these long dialogue driven scenes where I was very adamant about, we have to do the entire scene. We can't cut this into different things. Like you can't rely on the editor to like construct the performance. It puts a lot of pressure on the actors, and I mean, and especially on you, Jasmine. But that's, my guiding principle is sort of that, by it's like, yeah, by letting you have as much control as possible, it actually like, it's like we're getting all of your impulse, like intelligence. Does that make sense? That it's like that it's like the opposite of like times when I've been on set as a production assistant, which is how I've made money over the years, and being like sort of considered like that, if you like being sort of talked to by a higher up, where you don't, like, as if I don't know what I'm doing, and being told like this is the thing, as opposed to like entrusting like, oh yeah, like, you'll know what to do or whatever. You're not using like the full like extent of what my brain could bring.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
And I think I'm almost out of time, but very quickly, just, what do you hope people will take away? I mean, I love what you were saying at the beginning, that, it's set in this very kind of progressive, liberal, community, but things are so polarized at the moment, aren't they? It always feels like there's got to be a villain, a right side of history, a wrong side. And in this film, we're kind of going behind all that and saying, well, actually, this is a very specific scenario. There's not necessarily a clear right or wrong. And it's kind of a taboo topic in a way. So, what do you hope that people take away? Perhaps getting people to talk about things, and in a, less kind of black and white way.
Yeah,
I hope they. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead.
No,
you
you.
Go. No, you go. You go.
I hope that people look at their hypocrisies. That what are the who's being left out of the conversation, and I think that to this day still people with disabilities are overlooked, and I mean, in New York, I can certainly say it's still, I would like people to look around at the ways in which the architecture and sometimes the language that people use and the way things are set up, but specific architecture is a big thing. And even post-COVID, which, like, I mean, not that we're post-COVID, but even after having hope, I mean, we would have hoped that would have sort of taught people a lesson about, the how society fails to value disabled people. But I still think it's that, and I also just hope that it's an entertaining film.
Yeah. I hope they get a lesson in empathy, where they're more empathetic toward others, and they get real introspective with it and think about their roles and things. And I also really hope that they have great conversations afterward with each other. I think that's why I really got into filmmaking, so people can have communion. It's about community. So I really hope that they get to, have community with people they love and people they don't know,
All right, fantastic. Well, I think I'm out of time, but it was such a pleasure to speak to you both, and thanks so much for your time, and best of luck with the release of the film. Thank you so much. Cheers. Lovely to speak to you. Bye. Bye.